Hey guys, we're here for a super special watch collector today. As you can see, we're at the Temple store in Bulgari here on Bond Street in London. Let's go check it out. Hey guys, welcome to a really special edition of the Watch Collector today. I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's a bit different to what we normally do. We normally just get to watch me talking to camera, reviewing watches. But today we are at one of the very few what's called temple stores for Bulgari. There are 5 in the world, one of course of which is in London, which is where we are. And I'm with Gianni, who I've got to know, who was very kind to me in my search for a particular Bulgari watch, which we will come to in another episode. But what I really wanted to do with this video was to showcase some of the pieces that Bulgari currently has, and also to talk a bit about its history, to talk about not only it as a jewelry manufacturer, but obviously specifically a watch manufacturer. Because I think there might be a misconception here that Bulgari isn't a serious watch manufacturer, and particularly in relation to haute complication. So we're going to start with a little bit of history first of all. Bulgari was founded in 1884, some of you may know that already, by a Greek, Soterios Vulgaris. And it wasn't until 10 years later, in 1994 approximately, where he decided that he would change his name to Soterio Bulgari, effectively the phonetic way of pronouncing his surname and indeed his first name, and that's how Bulgari was born. He was a silversmith and became known for his creations, and then over the next 10 to 20 years or so really solidified his position as one of the go-to specialists in Rome, and by the 1910s had opened a second store. And this is really where the journey of watches started to come about. So Gianni, we know approximately when the first Bulgari watch came out. Can you kind of give us an idea of how the brand has viewed watches from that time and taking us through to the present day?
Yes, of course. So at the beginning, Bulgari was selling watches. They were very much with an element of jewels, especially for the ladies, of course, so encrusted with lots of diamonds and different gemstones. It was like a bracelet that, you know, used to tell the time, and originally we would source the movement from watch company like AP, Jaeger LeCoultre, and so on, because we didn't make movements ourselves. So it was all about the concept of the bracelet with an added timepiece.
And I think if I can just jump in there, we have an example. And so what Gianni has done is brought out some of the very special pieces from the different ranges, both men and women, for us to have a look at. We're going to look at these in detail in videos to come. But for example, we have what's called the turbogas Serpenti.
Yes,
right?
correct.
And this is what Gianni is referring to in terms of that real kind of bracelet effect that was created and quite identifiable as being immediately Bulgari.
Yes, of course. So this is very iconic. This concept of the wraparound a woman wrist started in 1940s from Bulgari, so very much at heart of our collection, our DNA, and it's very sensual. I see the ladies when they try it on and they wrap it around, you really feel like the animal is capturing you and is holding your wrist. So it's very actually sensual, it's very tactile. These, of course, it's quite a long tubogaz. It's 7 wraps, we call it the 7 things, or i 7 peccati, and it's just pure lush, but at the same time very wearable. And traditionally in the 40s, we would have shape of the case in different shape. For example, in 19 55 we introduced this element with an octagonal shape as well. We did round shape, we did pear shape. At the time, the movement again was not made by Bulgari. We would create the bracelet and then put the watch, the mechanism from watchmaker. Now, of course, we create everything in-house ourselves as well.
So it's plain that, bearing in mind we know about the founder and what he was well known for, and then when his sons became involved, evidently Bulgari is a jewelry manufacturer of unbelievable renown. But so even from the 40s, forgive me, is when they're starting to add, let's say, watch complications. I mean by that is it's much more complicated to create a bracelet with a watch than without. That's when it's from the 20s onwards, and then the 40s with the Serpenti turbo gas, and then moving forward from then, it's really begun to increase its knowledge and presentation of watches, both from a female perspective and also from a male perspective. And if we can fast forward a little bit, we all know about let's determine it as the quartz crisis. And I'm referring specifically in 1975 here. Bulgari actually did something quite special for its loyal collectors, didn't it, in 1975? What was that?
So we created a watch which was like a little bit of a gimmick, like a toy, but serious toy, of course, still a Bulgari toy. We did a watch which was round in shape with a quartz movement, and with engraved, embossed within the case, Bulgari Roma. And we made 100 of them, and Bulgari donated them as a gift to the 100 top clients at the time, of course.
And the idea of that particular piece, as I understand it, was with the engraving was to mimic the engraving that is on a coin, which you would have had from Roman times. That's
correct.
The idea.
Yes.
And it was 2 years later that the Bulgari was created. Is that right?
Yes, but that's because people went crazy. Everybody wanted to get hold of that watch. They all loved the idea. It was wearable, it was fun, it was something that you could wear it casually, and it was still a Bulgari timepiece. So people went crazy. They were begging to produce more. So obviously Bulgari saw an opportunity there, that there was something that was missing from us, and it was actually a collection of watches, as a proper collection, not just as an add-on any longer, but it was to create a full collection, and that's how the Bulgari was actually born.
But that was mechanical as opposed to quartz.
Correct.
So 75 is really, let's say, the birth of the start of the real kind of watch collection, should we say, particularly for men. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And then we move into the 80s, and by this point, let's say the sport watch scene had already really started with the Royal Oak and of course the Nautilus in the 70s. Bulgari started with its own sports collection in the 80s, didn't it?
You're talking about the Diagonal? Yes, the Diagonal, which was again, we did exploring different materials. So we did aluminium, we did titanium, more of a casual look, but we also did Diagonal Professional, which was adding more, let's say, everyday, so not really, but complication like GMT movement, scuba watches to go obviously underwater, and the other one was a tachymetric scale to measure the speed between A and B and so on. And it was a more sporty look, definitely, a watch that people could wear on the weekend or when they went on holiday and so on.
So we've already started to see kind of the evolution from the 70s onwards. Let's fast forward a little bit now to say 2004, and that was the year that Bulgari launched its first grand complication. It was its first tourbillon.
Yes, we did tourbillon, and we also did mini repeater already. It was an achievement for us because we were not really exploring, we were not really strong in that field, but that's already was showing the willingness of going there already. It's something that we strive to be the best in every categories, in jewelry, in watches, and so on. So we obviously worked very hard to create the first tourbillon watch, and we also did a minute repeater at more or less at the same time.
So having, let's face it, I think for most watch collectors, the tourbillon and or the minute repeater, and of course if you have both in the same watch, then that is incredibly unique, but they are pretty much the epitome of autorology. So that's 2004, and then 2010 was a pretty important year. Can you explain a little bit about that?
In 2010, okay, first of all, we acquired two well-known watchmaker, which was Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta. And obviously we acquired them in 2000. In 2010, we completely integrated the company, and it allowed Bulgari to now finally have a proper watchmaker, very serious, very reputable, and also to continue the legacy of Gerald Genta in this case. We created, we redesigned completely, we relaunched it, and we made it more Bulgari style, the Octo watch, which is what is very well known today as the main, more, let's say, serious watch for men's in the Bulgari collection. The Octo was subdivided in the Originale, which is the original, then the Octo Roma, a more classic take on the shape, a little bit softer on the edges, not so angular, and then of course the Octo Finissimo, which was all about pushing the boundary and going slimmer, and it's all about the mechanism really. So those are the three subcategories for the Octo watch. Octo because inspired by the octagonal shape, which is very architectural. It takes inspiration from different buildings of the city of Rome, of course, and is a perfect combination between round and square shape.
And that's something that obviously certainly took the 70s by storm, and of course the original Audemars Piguet Royal came out in 1972. Followed by the Nautilus in 76, and there have been multiple other interpretations of that octagonal case since. As I've mentioned, we've got 3 Finissimos and 3 Octoromas that we're going to jump into a little bit more detail. So 2010, we will show you a picture of the Daniel Roth combination. The original watch is absolutely breathtaking in that signature Daniel Roth case, and then coupled with the very first Octo Finissimo, which again, absolutely outstanding. We will make sure that we find those for you because you need to see them. Incredibly rare pieces. And if I'm not mistaken, the first Finissimo was launched, say, for general consumption, as it were, in 2014.
Yes, that's correct. The Finissimo, and it was actually our first world record. So we just went in with a bang, so to say, because usually many times it's the case that people start from, let's say, more ordinary watches and move their way up. We broke the world record for slim movement on the highest level of the thinnest manual winding Octo tourbillon.
And there aren't that many manufacturers, Gianni's correct, who start with a bang. They tend to start with a much more simple version first. Another example who did start with a bang, of course, is Laurent Ferrier when he launched his Grand Sport Tourbillon, which of course won GPHG when it was first introduced. But so that's 2014, and I don't think it's putting it too highly to say that the Finissimo, in my eyes, has become a modern icon of what a sports watch could represent. It is, of course, fair to say that it draws inspiration, but equally, what I really like about it is it's taken that design, those design cues from the 1970s, and yes, it has remained faithful to the octagonal basis. but it's done it in a very different way. And of course, specifically with the Finissimo range, we're talking about making it ultra thin, which I think is probably fair to say was the opposite of where the market was going at the time.
Yes, probably everything was bigger and bolder and heavier. So we just decided to go a different direction and focus on going thinner, of course, and also minimizing and making things smaller. So, and still retaining the original feature of the Octo Originale. So the case is quite articulated, it's quite complex. It has 110 facets, which they are actually maintained within the Octo Finissimos as well. Sometimes depending on the material, depending on the model they want to create, some are brass, some are polished to create different reflection of the lights and make it more playful. So it's actually quite complex.
And I think that's something that it really plays differently depending on the material that's chosen. So obviously here we have the rose gold, and spoiler alert, it's outstanding, as you can see, in rose gold. But then also you've got the finish that it's probably fair to say that has kind of become synonymous with the Finissimo, which is this sandblasted titanium. Now it's just a completely different look. It's much more stealthy. I know that some people have criticized the legibility of the dials in the sandblasted look. I'm not quite sure about that. I don't think I'd agree with it. I think actually they're still very legible because, for example, on this one, which is their perpetual calendar, it's in such a high gloss finish that actually it does have a sufficient contrast to be able to see it. We don't have one here, but the last time I was here with Gianni, he showed me their brand new the carbon gold, which when I saw it in photos, I was a bit skeptical, I have to say. But wow, that contrast of the way that the carbon is done with the rose gold touches, and the back of that watch, not only do you have the same movement, but the base plate has been coated in rose gold, and so is the platinum rotor, so that you have that uniformity throughout the watch. It's really is something. As I said, we're going to go into more detail on those. So that's the Finissimo, and then we have the Octo Roma. So a slightly larger, thicker case. Same kind of let's say innovation. This one is the Central Tourbillon Papillon, and again we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about that later. But what you can really feel, I think it's fair to say, is a generality to and theme that runs through these watches, without one imposing on the other. There are other brands that shall remain nameless. Oh no, we'll talk about it. Audemars Piguet was criticized hugely for the code 1159, using what some people determined as too many inspirations from the Royal Oak. My view is actually they smashed it out the park. Why do I think that? Because when you've got a piece that is so iconic, then I think what people really want is something that continues that theme. In my view, there is a very similar story to the Finissimo and the Roma. It carries that identity that I think Bulgari really enjoys, but makes them very, very different. They wear completely differently, which I think is probably, as watch collectors, one of the most important things. They're going to have different uses as part of a collection. So we talked about the Bulgari using a different way of interpreting the case, the thinness, the lightness. We've got the two examples of this model here. Where do you see Bulgari moving forward in the future in terms of their designs?
I think we are always aiming to to be innovative and to create something beautiful and extraordinary. But it's also very important never to lose your identity. You can't just suddenly introduce something completely different and nobody will recognize it. So already, if you look at the Octo Roma, it's already being redesigned slightly. So the Roma Naturalia, which is the one with the natural gemstone, is a little bit more angular, and the octagonal shape is more visible, especially in the lugs that are sticking out a little bit more. This is already a slight softer, and is a slight rework of the design. So it's a little bit more curved. The octagonal shape is still there, but not so strong. It's also a way to separate more the Finissimo, which retains more angularity, so to speak. And the Roma will be slightly more rounded, still with the octagonal shape, but in a much more softer way. So I think we want to, of course, they're all part of the same DNA, which is the octagonal shape, but we want to, at the same time, separate them even more.
It's interesting because I think there is a general trend now for watches to become smaller. If we go back to, say, when the AP Offshore was released back in 1993, if memory serves me correct, that was really the real start of watches increasing in size. I think Bulgari was ahead of the curve in releasing the Finissimo. I think they saw that reduction coming before perhaps others did, and it's becoming more and more acceptable for men to wear diameters of less than 40 millimeters now. A few years ago that was almost unheard of, and people were deriding others for saying, oh, your watch is only 36 millimeters or 38, for example. But overall, ever since I kind of first identified the Finissimo as one that I wanted to add to my collection, which is where Gianni and we first met, I think I've now got a much greater appreciation for the fact that this is a brand that does not do just jewelry. It is a serious watch manufacturer, and what we're going to do a little bit later on is to jump into some real in-depth reviews of these pieces, to try and bring these to you, because it's an absolute pleasure for me to be able to sit here and see them and review them for you, and they are the kind of watches that you don't get the opportunity to do that often. So Gianni, honestly, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. Absolutely stunning pieces. Thank you for opening up the beautiful temple. And guys, that's enough for now. We'll see you next time.